Oh, Max, you're coming in to watch the Zoom show? Okay.
Hello, this is Dave Hearn with episode 7 of the PhotoGeezers. We're going to do a topic today that Dick Yarmy is probably our campus expert on, and that's people in photography, environmental portraits, and the storytelling that goes with that. We are actually going to do this in 2 parts. We have maybe 7 or 8 photos to look at today, and then we'll have another 7 or 8. I'm going to throw it over to Dick for him to tell you a little bit more about it and how you ought to take this information in. So, Dick?
Yeah, good morning. Maybe you should put up the picture that got us thinking about this, Dave. And,
okay, let me share my screen.
Okay.
Oh, the picture.
Yeah.
There
Well,
you
no, why don't, here, put your outline up first. I think
Okay.
let them know. These were your thoughts on this, and I certainly concur with them. And we're going to include, Dave will include one of these in the email so that you will have this little cheat sheet if you have enough interest in the subject that you want to pursue it. And with that, we'll bounce back and forth to this outline when it's useful as this show unfolds. But if you go back to the picture that started it all, Dave, that got your attention, and explain maybe for the folks how this came about.
Okay. This particular picture, which will probably be on the highlights cover for the July issue, this is Diane DeGrasse, who's doing a painting of the daylilies that are in front of the hay rake there near Herbball Trail. Initially, Sue Smith had taken a group of pictures of her painting, and I liked it, but it didn't have pictures of the daylilies in the back. So to me, the story wasn't quite complete. So they restaged this is a staged photo, although it could easily have been done without staging. But the idea is you're telling the story of the artist and the painting and what she is painting to. And it got me to thinking, and then talked with Dick about how do we tell stories with people and photos. Okay,
and the basic concept of storytelling and us making it a subject, at least as far as I was concerned, is it's just one more tool in your toolbox and maybe adding another dimension to your photography. From my point of view, I've always looked at it, especially with travel photography. Maybe I used to kid and say, why would I take a picture of something I can buy in the postcard shop in the basement of the hotel? Why not find something different or unique about the culture in which you're traveling? And I've kind of always had that in the back of my mind as I walk the streets, and storytelling seems to be more prevalent with street photography. I think you have more opportunities. I think there was an example from New Orleans in St. Charles Square. The fortune teller who was applying the makeup, and none of you dirty old men come up with a comment as to why she caught my attention. But she was a rather unique customer, rather unique personality. And following the concept of working the subject, as I began moving around kind of in a 360 and photographing that lady, she was very preoccupied with her makeup, so it didn't bother her. Other things started to appear in the picture, and suddenly this tabloid kind of appeared with all these people, all interested in what was going on, but none of them interested in the same subject. You know, there's got to be at least 7 or 8 stories here, in my mind. And it's kind of a good example of in lens choices. Many times in street photography, people are going to zero in on somebody because of their body language or their eye contact or some of the things that get your attention. And you'd reach for a normal or a longer lens or push out the zoom in that. In a case like this, sometimes a wider lens and a greater point of view tells you more of the story.
And
David?
well, the other thing in this particular picture, and one of the things that Dick and I have talked about is color versus black and white. And I think Dick has chosen to put this in black and white. And I think rightfully so, because I imagine all those paintings in the background would really detract from the story if it stayed in color.
And that's most digital cameras, no matter what you choose to look at it in your viewfinder, the ultimate result when you push the button is color. So you've got color, you've got that choice when you sit down to process it or do whatever you want to do with it. And with that'd be the same is true with Snapseed with an iPhone. You could make those decisions. And Dave hit it right on the head, is that, at least from my point of view, if the color detracts from the story, then don't use it. And if it helps, of course, use it. Sometimes color can be the story. But in many cases, and here's a very good example, I'm afraid that the center of attention, Mrs. Hoffman, would be lost in a black and white. I think this would all kind of meld in together. But just the way the colors happen to work and the highlight, the key light coming down on her face, this works great in color.
I think the Sidney Wilson picture, but we actually tried to, I did a black and white conversion on this, and Dick and I looked at it, and we both came to the conclusion that this is a case where the color works better than a black and white. So it's some of it is in your decisions on your storytelling is also, do you include color and not include color?
And that exclusion thing, to me, is really important. I think what you exclude in a picture, and an art director once told me, it's not what you can add. It's, you know, when you can't take anything else away, you're done. And color is one of the things you can take away, and of course, cropping is another way to take things away. But you subtract from the picture anything that's distracting or grabs the eye when it shouldn't grab the eye. You want the main subject to always be where the eye goes if you've done a good job, I think.
Now,
and this is a great job that Sydney's done here.
In both this picture and in this picture, you notice that there is no, the eye contact is all the way around. People are looking different places. Then you can have a situation like this Samantha Maynard photo, which again, there's more. You might think there's only one story here, but there's multiple stories going on. But the other is now people are actually looking at the person taking the picture. But but there's activity going on. It's not a, you know, here's the 10-year-old kid or whatever age that kid was just standing in front of the camera showing off his picture. There's a lot of activity and a lot of storytelling that's going on in this image.
Yeah, again, a great example.
And if you look, you know, one of the things when you have multiple people and multiple stories, there's always kind of like if you look carefully, and if you can see my little magnifying glass here, and I'm going to blow up all the way over. Let me blow this up here. You've got one kid still in the background fishing. So I thought that was kind of cool.
And the story, the other one that I got a kick out of is the hillside T-shirt that was just in front of that. What is she possibly taking a picture of? You know, I cannot figure out what she's taking a picture of unless it's Sam taking the picture. But it's kind of interesting, you know, where she's pointed, and then the pride in the guy with the Nebraska shirt. Look at the pride in the face, yeah. And also the woman behind him. There's just the expressions in this picture just tell a zillion stories, and it brings up the point to me of, in this kind of work in storytelling pictures, the longer you can hold the audience attention, the better job you've done.
Right.
The more things that are in there for them to find, to me, makes it a better picture.
Most of you have seen this picture. It was actually in highlights, but again, one of the things that gets to be very important in these kinds of pictures is eye contact and where eyes are going. And here you have the resident looking at the dog that Ann's holding. My name just slipped. What's the dog's name? I'll remember. But Ann's looking at the dog. The lady's looking at the dog. The dog becomes, all the eyes are kind of focused in on the dog. That's Honey.
Honey, yeah.
Sorry. So where the eyes are and where people are looking is part of the story. Dick, this is your picture.
Yeah, I was. There was an African American barber shop in my neighborhood in Lexington, which was a culture of itself, and just an incredible place to hang out and take pictures. In this particular case, the young man was getting a haircut from G, the barber, who suddenly took an enormous interest in the guy's girlfriend and just kind of segued out of the haircut and went into a little styling lecture as to what he could possibly do for her. And I think some of that might have been other than hairstyling. And the expression on the boyfriend's face was what got my attention originally. And her rather coy look is she's having him say he'd move this over here and blah, blah, blah. But the triangle of looks, to me, is what made it a picture. Dave had noticed, and I'm not sure I noticed when I shot it, the motion in his hand that he was still working. But again, it's not, to me, it's a snapshot, but it's one that has a story in it. And again, color would have done nothing. Also, because the shop was under repair, it's all gray drywall. It would have been more bland in color than it is in black and white.
I might add that in doing this particular series, because Dick is our master at doing storytelling in his photos, that probably will have more of his pictures than anybody else's, but that's by my own intent. This one is interesting because before we were observing, and you could almost see that people aren't even aware of the photographer. And this is a very interesting story because here she's in this embrace, but she's looking at Dick.
One of my friends, a writer in Chicago, had seen this picture and he sent me a caption for it. And what he said was, "There's a photographer looking at," this was in Italy. He said, "There's a photographer looking at me, but don't worry about it. If my husband's got connections, I can have him killed." But Jason my friend has a rather vivid imagination. But strangely enough, you usually don't want to be noticed when you're photographing. And of course, when I was noticed, I then approached him and said, because it might not have been her husband, it might not have been her real other boyfriend. So I showed her the picture, and she was fine with it because it was someone she should have been embracing. But when you are discovered doing candid photography, the best thing to do is to walk up and present yourself and show that you aren't working for a private detective and you have no axe to grind.
But part of the point in talking about eyes is when you evaluate your photos, and a lot of this is about not so much about teaching her how to go out and shoot some, but it's also about when you've shot a photo, evaluating what the story is and what are the things you look for. And a lot of times you look for the eyes and where the eyes are. And in this case, everything's inside the picture. Here's looking out. Here's another one where it's outside the picture, but it's not necessarily looking at the cameraman. It could be looking anywhere.
Yeah, and many of the stories that are told are in your own head as you take the picture. I mean, when I saw that girl and I saw that 1,000-yard stare that she had and the body language, my thought was, guess whose blind date didn't show up? You know, she just looked so forlorn, and she paid no attention to me. She's looking through me, I guess is what you'd have to acknowledge. The eye contact was direct, was as if I was invisible. Uh, and I found that, to me, I always find body language and the way a head's tilted or the way the eyes light up as to me, that is the story. Again, color this could have, my feeling about pictures like this, especially if it's a little melancholy, et cetera, black and white just seems to work better. But that's personal preference, not certainly not anything they teach or a rule. It's just how I perceive it. When I'm looking through the viewfinder, I'm seeing it in black and white, even though I'm seeing it in color.
But the other point in this photo, beyond the eyes, and Dick mentioned, is also the body language of this. The body language matches the look. There's this kind of deflated. She's kind of collapsed down, hunched over. You know, just
the turned in toes and the collapsed knees give it a real forlorn feeling. You know, it's just.
So as you evaluate your shots, you're looking at eyes, and what are the eyes telling in the story, and also the body language, which brings us to this one.
One technical point on that I think is important. As you know, I guess I'm a big advocate of working the subject, but usually we've been talking about how you walk around and look at the light and look at the shapes. This is very true in this kind of candid photography or storytelling. You're not, unless you're, you know, a fantastic photographer, you're not going to get it in one shot. You need to, I'm not talking about a motor drive like sports photography, but you need to shoot several shots. And remember, both in iPhones and in digital cameras, there's a delay between the shutter and the picture. It's not like the old days of mechanical cameras that when you clicked it, that's when you got it. So that eye contact, that glance, whether it be happy, forlorn, or whatever it is fleeting. And I think this kind of work, Dave and I were laughing before, nobody ever sees what you don't show. Dave's hummingbird shot he's proud of. He said, you know, I took a whole bunch of shots to get that. And I think I quit back, nobody ever looked in Rembrandt's wastebasket. You've got to, luckily digital photography doesn't cost anything. It's not like film, you can just keep on shooting. Forgive the lecture.
Oh, so here's the last picture we're going to put up today. Dick, you want to give a little background?
Almost the same knee and foot as the little Italian girl before. This one's personal to me only because when your wife or your partner, we always try to take pictures. You know, smile. You know, give me a smile, and you got an album full of them. But as we all know, our partners, we're not always. Sometimes you want to go to dinner somewhere and they want to go somewhere else. You know, there are times when there are other moods, and from a personal standpoint, I find them worth capturing. I'd like to have pictures that relate all the different moods, in this case of my wife. And again, it was the lighting and the body. The lighting got my attention because of photography, but the body language was what made the picture to me. The tilt of the head, the highlight on the hair, and the face being in shadow, it all sort of fell together as a meaningful picture to me, and to someone else, there would be no story there. You know, it's
well, actually, I would say there's a story, but it might be a different story.
Yeah.
You know, there's obviously Carolyn is in a very pensive and serious thought at the time, and we've all had those people who close to us that at times get into thought, and for different reasons, and we start to, in all of these, we personalize. Part of the storytelling is that just like we back here, I could have a completely different story to behind this than what your friend suggested. So
Oh,
there's,
yeah. Well, oh, I hope so.
yeah, she's kind of, you know, we, in storytelling pictures, everybody brings their own emotions to it. But you still have to have certain elements like where the eyes are and what the body language is or what the setting is, the context of a picture. And
And before you start shooting, you have to make some technical decisions. You have to decide what what kind of view do you want. I always use the theatrical term. You know, how are you drawing the proscenium? You know, you have a wide angle, so you have a wide view of what you're about to see, or you have a tight view of what you want to see. It would be more telephoto. Those decisions, especially in storytelling, have to be made first. You've got to go out and say, "This is what I'm going to do." When you first absorb the scene, then you work within that. If you don't, you get pretty scattered. You know, people racking a zoom in and out and taking 85 different pictures. I think it takes your concentration away from what's important to storytelling, which again, the eyes, the body, the way people are looking, what they're doing.
where you
So
put,
you kind of, I'm sorry, I just gonna say, get the technical stuff out of the way,
yeah.
you know?
And where, well, I was going to say, and where you put people in the frame, because the forlorn nature of this one is, to me, enhanced by the fact that she's off to the side. It's like she's being isolated. There's all this empty space to her left.
Yeah, and my thinking when I shot it was that's the space where somebody should appear. You know, I left that space thinking someone should come in there and cheer her up. Now, I might be overthinking it, but that is what went through my mind.
And in this particular case with Carolyn, the size of I mean, if I shot that picture, I probably might have zoomed in. But again, I think having the what looks like a sad, thoughtful, pensive time is added to by the fact that she's smaller in this space. So she only takes up about 20% of the whole frame.
And I think, and that is something I think that you start doing instinctively that you might not even plan to do. You know, you just start to see it that way. And that is exactly right. Had I been shooting a portrait of her or something, she would not be nearly that small in frame.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here because that's the pictures we had intended to share. I think, Dick, don't you have a couple of comments here at the end about going forward, what we want people to do?
Yeah,
It's going to be part 2 coming up.
Yeah, what I wanted to make sure that people understood is the reason that you won't see an assignment in Dave's note to you is this is not an assignment. You know, we just wanted to open up the possibility of more tools for your toolbox and ways to expand your interest in photography. You know, again, my penchant, it's another way to work the subject. So if in the coming weeks, when we get pictures in, if people have decided to tell stories, of course, we're going to include them and comment on them. But you're not obligated to go out and try to find a story or manufacture one. This is just something that we thought, because we were kind of inspired by the picture, the painting picture, and we thought, gosh, we ought to share our thoughts about this kind of photography with folks, and they might enjoy it.
Okay. And like I said, we're going to have part 2, and we have some others to talk about. So with that, until July, this is the PhotoGeezers.
Thank you for watching.